America has a problem.
Make a great double date. I like you on the left, and I think Zerka likes the girl on the right. How old are you guys?
Underage.
Like how underage though? Like,
Will be turning 15 in a month.
America,
PhD is a pimping degree.
So the recruitment process is, you message him on Instagram.
I was contacted by Andrew Tate, the older of the Tate brothers, 3 years ago when I was just 16.
I messaged her, she's like, I'm only 16. I was like, give a know about me.
you know, you said it looks like I'm in a teenage girl's bedroom.
Yeah.
To some people that would be an insult, but to me, I find that quite flattering, to be honest. You know, like that's exactly what you expect.
And all these 15-year-olds.
America.
I love sucking Logan's for some reason. I'm not trying to gas him up. He has a really nice suckable.
America.
The person who's gonna f my wife is Lil D.
Stop playing with me!
I gotta be the husband of the year. Let me tell you, I am the one.
America has a problem.
This is all degenerate bullshit. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And guess what? It's not their fault. Because after all, they're only doing it because they need our attention. These people are like clout parasites, willing to latch on to any and everything that can give them the most attention at all times. Because our attention is the foundation to the social media economy, and it's pretty simple. The more attention brings in more views, and those big views bring in fame or infamy and the big money. And even if you don't want fame necessarily, we all want money. Maybe not 30 million or a billion, but we all want a sufficient amount of money to where stressing about the bills is no longer a thing. The tricky part to this, however, is that these people aren't inherently evil, although that might be up for debate later on. They're really glorified court jesters, clowns, and straight up f***ing buffoons. Buffoons who choose to make themselves as dislikable as possible. And that's because in this generation, this phone right here is one of the most powerful tools that you can own. And if you can learn to master it and tailor it to your own skill set, you'll fly high and travel far. And this mastery has now turned the court jesters into kings, and furthermore made us, the consumers, the audience, the real losers. And this is all our fault, because if you don't know your history, your future, for a lack of better words, will be
So I can't ask Brandy what that mouth do though.
No, you cannot.
No. Oh, okay.
Yeah, you just look like a pedophile the way you just looking right now.
No, I'm not a pedophile. I'm a creep. I'm a sexual deviant.
How many guys you figure you've done in your life?
Oh, so I'm not. Do you think I'm actually going to talk to you about this?
More than 10? I'll ask, I have a reason for asking that.
Why?
I'm wondering what it takes to get into your pants.
She's a catch.
What history has shown us is that these figures are only adhering to a playbook, a formula really, where they play on the feelings of us as human beings, weaponizing our sick need to want to feel superior to the next man. In other words, they're displaying the art of triggering. Madonna did it back in her heyday. The Kardashians have done it throughout their respective careers. And amongst musicians, I would say that Lil Nas X is probably the most recent iteration of this same method. And while some of these cases were different and done for some different reasons, and not necessarily to be a purposeful troll, it still garnered the same strong reactions from the public, whether it was right or wrong. And now all these streamers and content creators and music artists, they're now exhibiting a masterclass in triggering the public. And we're the buffoons because we watch these people engage in clear degeneracy to get attention and engagement, and we give it to them because we think we're actually doing something by making the same 20 videos saying essentially the same talking points, just rinse, repeat. And to be crystal clear, I don't hate any of these videos calling out this bullshit, and I'm self-aware enough to know that there's really no idea under the sun that's original. I just think that unfortunately it's almost a waste of time. I've talked about social media algorithms in my previous video on how streaming destroyed the #1 hit, but what I failed to mention was the flip side to algorithms. Because inherently, look, they're not bad, they're just imperfect. But the imperfections can lead to horrible results, like echo chambers of toxic thought. And the people who would need to see a video done by Blackie Speaks or Tunde detailing just how harmful Sexy Red's antics and image really is probably won't ever come across it. Just those of us who already know how destructive her presence really is. And this can be said for so many other piece of creators. Like naming lip gloss products after some of the most disgusting things in the world, including a venereal disease is not normal. So of course we think that Sexy Red is a CIA experiment sent to set the black community back even more. Because dog, I'd sooner believe that than to really believe that someone would unironically be selling lip gloss, a product that you know little girls are gonna want to purchase with product names like yellow discharge. Ugh.
Oh no.
God, please, if I ever have a daughter, just God, give me all the health in the world to just be around. It's all written up to you. We're just existing in one big circular ecosystem where low-key, everyone has a chance to benefit, even me. Because while I'm trying my hardest not to give the same generic take of Sexy Red is bad for the youth or Andrew Tate is a glorified pimp, I'm still making content around their existence. But in the hopes that people really understand by the end of this video what they're doing when they continue to engage in the same tired ass cycle and more so complain about it. So why does triggering, no matter how obvious the attempts are, still manage to get the public to react so strongly? Simple. Because the most important component to being human is coexistence, and successful coexistence happens smoothly and swiftly so long as everyone adheres to the status quo and the norms that have been set in stone. It doesn't matter if they're harmful to one group and exponentially beneficial to another. We don't favor change because it ruins routine and it forces us to readjust, especially if the change is too complex, and moreover, it takes away advantages and privileges that we've gotten used to having. It's why sometimes emphasis on sometimes. I understand when people talk about past historical figures committing atrocities and your favorite college classmate just wants to play devil's advocate, which most times is just code for, I really believe in this bullshit I'm about to say, I'm just too to actually stand on business. Because unfortunately, most people do just go with the flow, even if morally, they don't necessarily want to. And the unfortunate reality for most of us is that we are not as benevolent as we believe ourselves to really be. And this is something that was proven in one of the most controversial psychological social experiments of all time. To give some background on the Milgram experiment for those who may not be aware, Stanley Milgram was a psychologist at Yale University who wanted to perform an experiment that focused on the conflict between obedience to authority and personal conscience. You see, Milgram had noticed that World War II Nazi soldiers had tried to justify committing horrible, inhumane acts by saying that they were just following orders, obedience to the highest and most dangerous form. A bullshit excuse is what many thought when they heard these justifications, but Milgram wanted to figure out whether it was Germans specifically who were obedient to authority figures, because this form of extreme obedience was a very common rationale for the murders that happened in World War II. And to test his theories, Milgram chose a wide range of participants, all men, ages ranging from 20 years old to 50 years old. And before the experiment took place, the participants were introduced to a Confederate that Milgram had hired. A Confederate, for further context, is known as a research actor in psychology experiments. And as a part of the experiment, the subjects, along with the Confederate, would draw straws as a means of determining who would be the teacher or the learner. And it was always rigged so that the Confederate was always the learner. There was also an experimenter dressed in a gray lab coat who was supposed to be the authority figure who would oversee and give the orders to the subjects. There were two rooms in the lab, one for the learner and another for the teacher, and the learner would be strapped to an electric chair while the teacher was put in another room with an electric shock generator. The learner was given a list of word pairs that he was supposed to memorize, and the teacher was supposed to then test him by naming a word and then asking the learner to remember the pair word from a list of 4 other options. So for example, if you received a pair that was cat and dog, the teacher would ask for the pair word to cat, and his 4 options to choose from would be mouse, chocolate, horse, and dog. And if he said any other word besides dog, he would receive an electric shock, and to make it worse, every time the learner would answer the question wrong, the teacher was supposed to increase the level of shock every single time under the instructions of the man in the lab coat. There were 30 switches on the shock generator ranging from 15 volts to 450 volts. By the way guys, these shocks in the fucking generator weren't even real, but it was the learner's job to act as though they were real, to give the subjects the impression that they were causing pain to another person for no good reason, testing the morality of the average American, only to come face to face with a very horrifying reality.
You're gonna get a shock, 180 volts.
I can't stand the pain. Let me out of here.
Can't stand it. I'm not gonna kill that man, there. I mean, who's going to take the responsibility if anything happens to that gentleman?
I'm responsible for anything that happens here. Continue, please.
2/3 of volunteers were prepared to administer a potentially fatal electric shock when encouraged to do so. by what they perceived as a legitimate authority figure.
375 volts. I think something's happened to that fellow in there. I don't get no answer. He was hollering for less voltage. Can't you check in and see if he's all right, please?
Milgram's findings horrified America. They showed that decent American citizens were as capable of committing acts against their conscience as the Germans had been under the Nazis.
65% of the participants delivered shocks up to the highest level of 450 volts, and the rest of the participants continued all the way up until 300 volts. So that means every single person in the experiment had delivered a severe level of shock to a man they didn't know who was begging them to stop, all because the man in the lab coat, the authority figure, said so. I'll come back to this in a little bit, but let me introduce another element first. This is an emotional valence and arousal model. You see, emotional valence describes the extent to which an emotion is either positive or negative, whereas arousal refers to the level of intensity. And when arousal is high and the emotional valence is either positive or negative, a person is experiencing either great joy or anger. And it's these types of emotions that these public figures are looking to trigger whenever they engage in their bullshit for the public to see and consume. And when these strong emotions are felt, they cause a person to feel more invested in the matter. This is essentially the attitude behind the old expression, all publicity is good publicity. And there was a study done on what makes content go viral online by the Journal of Marketing Research. The study was performed by observing 7,000 articles in the New York Times, one of the most popular newspaper brands in the entire world. And they found that emotions in the high end of arousal, such as anger or excitement, were linked to virality as opposed to the lower end of arousal. And they concluded that if content invoked higher levels of arousal, it's more likely to be shared amongst the people. So when you take this into account, along with the Milgram experiment, the picture starts to become much clearer. You see, what Milgram showed us is that people are often more obedient to an authority figure than we like to believe. And this is the same dynamic that can be seen in today's world of influencers and celebrities. You see, influencers can set trends, promote behaviors, and shape opinions, and when these figures endorse or even normalize certain behaviors, their big audiences might follow suit, causing not just potential outrage, but also a potential spread of degenerate behavior amongst their impressionable followers. And by stirring up outrage, whether through controversial statements or actions, they're tapping into the previously mentioned art of triggering, causing this urge to respond from the public. That very same outrage will then push their levels of engagement to the moon. It's a cycle where every strong emotional reaction feeds right back into the algorithm. And because we know the algorithm is imperfect, we also know that it doesn't understand the difference between hate watch and support. And the end results lead to a figure gaining more visibility and influence regardless of the driving force. And look, I know it's not fair per se to blame celebrities for what everyday people do, but I also can't ignore the fact that influence is influence. Why do you think people use celebrities for product endorsements or even political endorsements in the first place? Their voices are just that powerful. And if a powerful voice goes unchecked, it can cause an avalanche of unforeseen circumstances. A great example of this was seen in how figures like Kevin Samuels and Andrew Tate, who both led this charge of quote unquote bringing masculinity back, were able to capture the attention of the masses and gain millions of followers through rhetoric that at best can be described as self-help with tough love, and at worst was nothing more than a siren song for misogyny disguised as self-improvement. So because most of us just go with the flow of things in order to be in alignment with those who we perceive to be an authority figure of some sort, the effects of misused influence travels far, and if packaged properly and if there's enough money to be made from it, it'll travel far. And for those of us on the opposite end of the spectrum who rightfully condemn this kind of behavior, we aren't any better in helping it travel far because we're engaging in the same level of interest whenever we leave hate comments or just repeatedly complain about the same issues with no real attempt at a solution. So what can we do about this? The biggest thing we can do, honestly, is just to be more aware of the rage baiting patterns as they appear in our faces. By recognizing the tactics being used to manipulate us, we can slowly but surely start to break the cycle of monetized outrage. And before we react to things so fast, we just gotta ask ourselves, why the f am I even looking at this goofy ass shit? And what the f is the end goal here? It's like taking a quick set of woosahs before barking at someone for disrespecting you. You just gotta understand that while it may be easier to lean into the bullshit it isn't helping anyone, especially yourself. And while outrage can be a powerful force for good change, it can also be manipulated. So by recognizing the patterns in influencer behavior and celebrity behavior, and more so understanding the power of our own reactions, we can start taking back control, because we, as the audience, have always had the power to dictate everything and never the other way around, unless we relinquish it willingly.